What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Now today, unfortunately, we do have to discuss some releases from WWE. We're not here to talk about anything fun. We are here, unfortunately, to talk about releases because, as is tradition, it seems almost every year just after WrestleMania, WWE do the rounds and cut talent from their roster due to budget cuts. Almost always is what they say, despite the fact that they just had the highest grossing WrestleMania and they are routinely bragging about the highest gated events and how they're charging $40,000 for a front row seat at SummerSlam. You know, but they can't afford to pay these guys, probably. Now, like I said, this is sort of common practice for WWE. At least once a year we do get a big round of cuts where we see a lot of people released from their contract. Kind of most notably, in 2016 there was a major round of releases that included Cody Rhodes, that obviously then led to him going on to become the Cody Rhodes that we now know and love, or have feelings regarding. I love him. I do love him. As well, probably another most notable one is in COVID, when they released a lot of people right at the start of COVID. They released No Way Jose, who was travelling cross-country every week to be at Raw, and they just released him because, you know, why would you reward loyalty in this stupid company? But I'm just going to look at the list of wrestlers who have just been released. I'm just going to read it here. I've got the list in front of me. These releases started on Friday. It is now Sunday morning as I record. So these are about a day and a half ago, but, you know, 36 hours ago, something like that. These began coming through the pipeline. The names released from the main roster: Braun Strowman, Shayna Baszler, Caden Carter, Katana Chance, and most egregiously Dakota Kai. That is insane, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Because down in NXT as well, we had the releases of Cora Jade, Gigi Dolan, Eddie Thorpe, Jakara Jackson, Riley Osborne, Oro Mensah, Javier Bernal, Joe Coffey, Mark Coffey and Wolfgang, so all of Gallus, and Danny Palmer. Now, a few of these names do stick out for many reasons. Number one, probably being Braun Strowman, as much as I want to talk about Dakota Kai, and we will talk about Dakota Kai in a minute. Braun Strowman feels like the weirdest one here. Obviously, he was released in that big round of COVID cuts, came back, has just been used as a big fun monster to get the other monsters over. You know, he's had fun matches with Jacob Fatu, he's had a great feud with Bronson Reed. As well as that, he had the fun little and large tag team with Ricochet a couple of years ago. He's kind of in this position now, in his position in the card, a kind of mid-card guy who can come up and just basically be the last thing that you need someone to run through to get over, especially the big men. And he, you know, had kind of settled into that role fair enough. Every time you watched it, it was very clear that his knees are screaming. I think he said in an interview recently he's more or less paralysed in one of his legs, and he just powers through it. And making that much of a commitment to this company, and making that much of you know, here's the thing, Strowman, I don't think he's going to wrestle after this. I think this is it for Braun Strowman now. I have a feeling he was probably just going to bow out at the end of this contract anyway, whenever that may have been, because, like I say, his body's fucking cooked. But a guy who has done so much for the company, and a guy who's been there and, you know, has made stars, and, you know, you made him a star. He's a former Universal Champion. He's a big fucking deal. You know, the dude was huge, both physically and literally. But again, rewarding any semblance of loyalty with, we're not really using you our way. We don't have a new big man to beat you. You know, we gave you to Bronson Reed, we gave you to Jacob Fatu. I guess there's no one else that you can wrestle right now because Femi's down in NXT. Right, we'll see you later. You go enjoy yourself. You have fun. For a man that's continuing to wrestle, saying that he's essentially lost the use of one of his legs in his day-to-day life because of how fucking done in his body is, how knackered he is. You just go, nah, see you later. You're not doing anything for us. Whilst you're, once again, turning over record profits. The rest of the main roster releases all then come from the women's division. We have one of the only actual fleshed out tag teams in that women's tag team division with Caden Carter and Katana Chance. I like both of them. I think they're both very fun. But again, they've not done a lot. They weren't really being used a lot, which is weird when you're trying to... Their release isn't entirely confusing, however, the lack of their inclusion on TV is, especially because of how much they want to push these women's tag team titles. You know, they made it such a big deal of Naomi and Jade's storyline stemmed from, you know, Bianca and Jade being those tag champs, and then Naomi and Bianca being those tag champs. Obviously, you keep pushing that Raquel and Liv have now held those titles 4 times. It was used in Lyra's story for WrestleMania instead of just giving her a match for her championship at WrestleMania. Now, that division has always felt underbaked essentially from the beginning, and I liked it when it was and I do like it when it roves between NXT and the main roster. However, It's a thoroughly underbaked division. You have a team there ready to go with great chemistry and a lot of fun moves, and you just got nah, see you later. As well as that, Shayna Baszler also released. Shayna had essentially just been not doing a lot forever, which I think is a shame, because Shayna is awesome. Shayna's great. If you look back on NXT, Shayna, like, that's one of my favourite runs of any professional wrestler ever. And they ruined her career with one simple bad decision, which was Elimination Chamber 2020. Now, if you remember Elimination Chamber 2020, I can't remember who was always in it. I think it was Liv, Natalya, Ruby Riott, someone else. That's too early for Raquel, I think. Let me go find out. God, I'm looking at this show. There was no World Championship on this card, because Lesnar had the World and was Goldberg Universal. I think Goldberg was the Universal Champion here. This is after. Is this after he's beat The Fiend? Let's find out. It was after he beat The Fiend. So we had a pay-per-view, the pay-per-view before WrestleMania without a World Championship on the card, without men's World Championship on the card, I should say. But I'm looking at who was in that match. It was Shayna, defeats Natalya, Liv Morgan, Asuka, Ruby Riott, and Sarah Logan. I thought it was Sarah Logan. I should have trusted my gut. They ruined Shayna's momentum with one simple, stupid decision. Shayna comes in 4th in that Elimination Chamber. The other 3 women are in there. She chokes out all of them, and then she kind of roves back and forth between Asuka and Liv Morgan's pods. And then Liv Morgan comes out, and then she chokes her out almost instantly. And there's just 4 minutes of a stare down with her and Asuka, essentially. Whereas you just move her to 5, because she still eliminated every single person in this match. You move her to coming out 5th. She comes in, taps everyone else out, and then she stands outside Asuka's pod for, even if it's just a full 2 minutes of them two staring at each other. She stands outside the door to Asuka's pod, and it's going to be hands on sight, and then you let them go out and cook. But no, it was an awful match because of one stupid decision. And Shayna's momentum never really recovered from that. You then had her biting Becky Lynch's neck and becoming a vampire, then to lose at WrestleMania, to not win Money in the Bank, because, which then would have made her, was she even in the Money in the Bank match? Because Becky had to vacate her title because she was pregnant, so it went to Asuka, who won Money in the Bank, and it was a whole thing. And yeah, so Shayna's release isn't entirely surprising. I hope she goes on to somewhere new. Again, there's not many people from this list of releases that have a very obvious landing spot, which I think makes this list of releases kinda suck the most out of like recent memory, because, you know, even though he never went, Cardona essentially felt like a surefire thing to go to AEW. You look at the releases back in 2016, Cody to Impact was kind of written in the stars, as well as him then going to Ring of Honor as well. Like, he just wanted to go out and be on the indies, and that's kind of where it looked as if he was going. It is where he went to, but there's no one from these lists, apart from one person, really, who I'm going to talk about right now, that feels that there's an obvious landing zone for her, and that's Dakota Kai. Dakota Kai is a fucking star. Dakota Kai is, for my money, the most egregious release on this entire list, because recently Nick Khan came out and he said, "Oh, we don't bench people. We don't make people sit at home." And Dakota Kai just came out and she was like, "I miss wrestling. I miss being on TV. I miss being with my friends. And by the way, I am not her." So everyone was like, "Oh, so WWE benched Dakota Kai." And now what they've done is they've released Dakota Kai. Now, Dakota Kai was on TV this year having bangers for the Women's Intercontinental Championship. She is in Damage Control. She is linked and partnered and paired with your Women's World Champion in the Women's World Champion, Io Sky. She is a glue piece on TV that everyone loves. She's an incredible talent in the ring. She's an incredible talent on the mic. She has everything there. The only reason she's not a bigger star is because her best friends are some of the biggest stars in the company, and she's not as big a star as them. And that's okay. She is still fantastic. You release someone with the upside of Dakota Kai, especially after this year essentially being a foundational piece in making Valkyrie such a huge part of that TV, with their bouts for that championship on Raw, fucking hooping every time she goes out there. And they've sent her home for no reason, and then they've released her. Like I say, to me, she's the only one with a very obvious landing zone here, a very obvious place to go, and that is probably a mixture of AEW and killing it in DPW. God almighty, John Blood, you keep your mouth shut and you bring Ken Kota to your company, and you will print money, my brother. You will print money, my brother. But again, like I say, out of the 5 released from the main roster, she's the only one that feels like there is an obvious spot for her to go. I think Strowman's probably just going to retire Shayna, I mean, Shayna's in her mid-40s, she's obviously not going to go back to MMA. She'll probably do some GCW stuff, I would imagine, do some indies. I'd like to see her prove she can be a demon. I'd like to see her maybe go to Japan. I feel like Kaden Carter and Katana Chance, Casey Catanzaro, I feel like they'll probably try their hand over in Japan. I think they'd work really, really well over there. But there's not an obvious landing zone for any of them. Like I say, I think Strowman's just going to retire. And the same can be said for all of these NXT releases. A lot of people have said Cora Jade, Eliana Black should go to AEW. I just don't really see a world where she fits the way that I think Dakota Kai, Ken Kota will fit within that roster and what they need and where they're kind of going. I don't think Eliana Black fits that role. She also just started mouthing off about Sky Blue just having a match one time. I guess because she felt fairly safe and protected in WWE. And I know people on Stan Twitter want to say it's, she came back, there was the Becky Lynch stuff and the weird behaviour, whatever. I'm not going to get into that. One, because Stan Twitter and every sort of facet of the world is just weird and can be gross and odd because you don't know these people. But I'm not here to speculate on gossip. I just want to talk about the releases. But again, Cora Jade, Gigi Dolan, Eddie Thorpe, Chikara Jackson, Riley Osborne, Oro Mensah, Javier Bernal, Gallus, and Danny Palmer. There's no real obvious landing spot for these guys. All of these guys feel tailor-made for Impact, for TNA. But TNA won't touch them because TNA now have this partnership with WWE where they're WWE Light now. TNA have just banned blading from their internal policy to be in line with WWE's internal policy. You can't be running the Razor in TNA no more because they don't run the Razor at the boss's house in Stamford. So because of that, why would they then say, well, we're just going to take in Eliana Black and we're going to take in Priscilla Kelly when you have just released Cora Jade and Gigi Dolan? Because they are trying to appease their overlords. They're trying to appease the ones up high. The rest of them, I don't get. Chase U never really worked for me, but you split Chase U up for a Ridge. Chase U were over. People liked Chase U. Like I said, it never clicked for me, but I get that that's just how it's going to be sometimes. Chase U were over as fuck. They added a shitter to the mix. Ridge Holland then turned on everyone. They disbanded Chase U. They released Duke Hudson. They've now released Riley Osborne. All for a Ridge Holland singles push that obviously didn't work because he is a shitter. The final release on here I do want to talk about now is Gallus, the Gallus boys, Joe and Mark Coffey and Wolfgang. Now, I think they're fine. They're Joe Coffey I used to have a lot of time for. I still really like Mark Coffey. I think there's a lot of upside in Mark Coffey that we don't really see, I guess, because he's the younger brother. But Gallus aren't a faction I've really cared that much about for a long time. Which is a shame because I do like all the wrestlers individually, but they've just not. That's just kind of, again, not nothing on them. It just, for me, it's just not really clicking to me. But the thing that's really confusing about this is those were the three guys tasked with getting The Rock in ring shape last year. Those were the three guys that were tasked with making sure The Rock was ready to go at WrestleMania to potentially wrestle Roman Reigns. And then in the end, that didn't happen because obviously it's a bad idea for last year's WrestleMania and probably now forever because both of them are cooked. But they're the ones responsible for getting The Rock back in the door. They're the ones responsible for getting The Rock back to in-ring shape and having him in, that WrestleMania main event, which everyone loved, both nights of it. And yeah, they've not been doing much, but again, this kind of comes back to the WWE just not rewarding you for things that you've done in service of the company. Kind of like Strowman. WrestleMania 40 is one of the highest regarded WrestleManias of the last few years, and that is in no small part to those main events. And as much as I believe The Rock coming back and Black Adam bombing has been a net negative to the professional wrestling industry, I still can't deny that both of those nights were a lot of fun, and we cannot take away from that fact that we can't, just because I don't love what's happened since, I can't take away from the fact that The Rock being in that match is a huge part of why that match worked so well. Both matches, the tag and the singles match. But these are the guys who, like I say, they're the ones that The Rock was I think, handpicked to get him ready for coming back to the ring and helping make WWE all this money, and probably now being the reason why WWE feels so confident charging stupid fucking money for their shows. And you just let these guys go with a lot of talent. I don't really want to say potential because they're all in their 40s now probably, but there's still a lot to get out of those guys. And again, I don't really see a world where they do that now. because I don't. Like I say, they feel primed for Impact, but they're not gonna go to Impact because of, you know, the overlords in Stanford. So that's kind of my thoughts on these releases. In general, it's always gross when they do this. You can just let these people sit their contracts out, because now what you do is you also, to mention as well, they're not going to be renewing Shotzi's contract. She's been moved to the alumni section on the website, so her contract will probably be up very soon. So we can expect to see Shotzi somewhere very soon. Again, I don't really know where she goes. I would like to see her in AEW, but Jericho still somehow has pull there, and obviously he fucking talks at length about how he doesn't mention, he's like, one of the people that works over there. That's what he always says when he's talking about Shotzi. I would love to see her get booked and have Jericho to commentary for it. I think it'd be really fun. But again, I guess with the Shotzi one, they're doing it the way they should. We're not going to be using you. That's cool. Your contract's nearly up. We're making all this money. We don't need to save money anywhere. We are literally extorting our fans if they want to come and watch our product. You know, take the year off and then heal up on any injuries or get better or do whatever. But, and listen, I also can't talk on behalf of these people. That I would imagine there's people here who have asked to be released from their contract, wanted out, possibly. But it's always gross when these mass releases happen, because if Strowman goes, hey, I want to sack it off, I want to retire, cool. You just release Strowman from his contract and he's done. Or Dakota Kai says, why am I still at home? I want to go wrestle. Cool, you just released Dakota Kai from her contract. But when you do it en masse, it's 5 on the main roster and 11 in NXT. When you release 16 people at once, 17 if you include Shotzi, which again I don't really include here because that's not really a release, that's just letting her contract expire. When you have 16 professional wrestlers that you release en masse all in the space of a day, it's always gross. It's never good. And you do it with Reg the Fridge and Nikita Lyons still on the roster. I just have to wonder, do we even like professional wrestling at this point? But that's it for me today, guys. Just wanted to come on here and share my thoughts regarding these releases. Now, I do think most to all of these guys will go on and kill it, provided they're allowed to go and kill it elsewhere. Like I say, I think the WWE TNA relationship is bad for many reasons. I think it's bad, but mostly because it now takes a potential landing spot away from these people who are released from WWE. There's no real other alternative than AEW. I don't think a lot of these guys fit in AEW. Carl Fredericks probably just goes back to the New Japan dojo, and they just essentially sent him on an excursion as Eddie Thorpe. So you probably see Carl Fredericks back in New Japan, I would imagine. But apart from that, guys, it's never fun. It's never a good thing to talk about. It's never a good thing to happen. But let me know what you think of all this in the comments down below. Where do you think these guys will end up? I don't want to fill it with negativity, because we're not about negativity on this channel as much as this is a negative video. Where do you want to see these guys end up? Where would you like to see go? Who do you think is going to do where do you think is the best place for all these guys to get the best out of them? I really do want to know all of your thoughts, because again, I have blind spots in wrestling. There might be a promotion out there somewhere that is killing it that I've just not quite picked up on, and you think, you know, if we send this guy over to wrestle there, this could be a complete reinvention for them. I want to know all this. So let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Show us to all your mates and tell them about the handsome man on YouTube with the good wrestling opinions. Once again, guys, my name is Jake. This is where I talk wrestling. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.